Never let your HOA bully you into paying for damages you didn't cause. This story will show you exactly how I fought back when my neighbor Karen literally crashed in my property, blamed me for it, and got the HOA to back her up. So picture this. It's a regular Tuesday morning. I'm in my kitchen making coffee when I hear this massive crash from outside. I run out to find Karen's Jeep smashed into my garden wall. Bricks everywhere, her front bumper completely destroyed, and my beautiful wall that I just paid $3,000 to have rebuilt last summer. Now, it looks like someone took a sledgehammer to it. But here's where it gets crazy. Karen gets out of her Jeep, dusts herself off, looks at the damage she caused, and immediately starts yelling at me. That's right. The person who crashed into MY property is somehow blaming me for her driving into it. Before I get too far into this story, let me give you some background. I've lived in this quiet suburban neighborhood for about 7 years. It's one of those places with an HOA that's supposed to keep everything looking nice and maintain property values. Usually, they just send annoying letters about your grass being half an inch too tall or your trash cans being visible from the street. Karen moved in about 2 years ago. From day one, she was that neighbor. You know the one, complaining about everything. Calling the HOA if someone's package was left on their porch for more than a few hours. Leaving passive-aggressive notes on windshields if someone parked slightly over the line. The kind of person who makes you question why you ever bought a house in a community with shared rules. So back to the crash scene. Karen is standing there, phone already in hand, talking to someone while pointing at my wall. I can hear her saying things like it's a hazard and shouldn't be allowed, and he needs to pay for my damages. I'm standing there in my pajamas, coffee still in hand, completely baffled. Me, Karen, you drove into my wall. Your car hit my property. How is this my fault? Karen, your wall is too close to the street. It's not properly marked. It's a safety hazard. Now, let me be clear. This wall has been here for over 20 years. It's exactly where it's supposed to be, fully permitted, and completely within code. It's set back from the street exactly the same distance as every other wall on our street. Me, Karen, this wall has been here since before either of us lived here. You were the one driving, you hit the wall. Karen, I was avoiding a cat, and your wall shouldn't be there anyway. I'm calling the HOA right now and filing a complaint. So she does. She's on the phone with someone from the HOA board while I'm taking pictures of the damage with my phone. The HOA representative shows up about 20 minutes later. It's one of the board members, Dave, who's always seemed reasonable in the past. Dave looks at the scene, talks to Karen first, of course, then comes over to me. Dave, so Karen says your wall is a hazard, and she wants you to pay for the damages to her Jeep. Me, Dave, with all due respect, she drove into a stationary object that's been here for decades. How is that my responsibility? Dave, well, she's claiming it wasn't properly visible and that it's too close to the road. We'll need to investigate. This is where things started to go from bad to worse. Over the next few days, Karen filed not just a complaint with the HOA, but an actual insurance claim against MY Homeowners Insurance for damages to her vehicle. She also sent me a letter from her lawyer demanding I pay for her car repairs, medical expenses, she claimed whiplash, and emotional distress. The HOA sent me a violation notice saying my wall was in violation of community standards because it was too close to the roadway and created a hazardous condition. They gave me 14 days to either move the wall or remove it entirely. I was floored. This wall was the same as every other wall on the street. No one had ever complained about it before. And now, suddenly, it's a violation? I called a meeting with the HOA board. I brought photos of every other wall on our street, showing they were all positioned exactly like mine. I brought the original building plans for my house, showing the wall was properly permitted and built to code. I even brought a copy of the neighborhood plat showing the exact property lines. The board listened politely, but then the HOA president, who happened to be good friends with Karen, dropped the bombshell. HOA president, while your wall may have been built to code at the time, our community standards have evolved. We've recently updated our guidelines to require additional setback for permanent structures near roadways. You'll need to bring your property into compliance. Me, when were these updated? I never received any notice about new guidelines. HOA president, They were passed at last month's board meeting. The notice went out in the monthly newsletter. I checked every newsletter from the past year. There was no mention of updated setback requirements. When I pointed this out, they claimed it was an oversight but that the new rules still applied. This was clearly retaliation. Karen was friends with board members, and they were changing rules specifically to target me. I hire a lawyer. We sent a response to Karen's lawyer denying any liability and pointing out that she was the one who drove into a stationary object. We also sent a formal response to the HOA challenging their violation notice and demanding they provide evidence of these supposed new guidelines. That's when Karen escalated things. She filed a lawsuit against me, not just for the damages to her Jeep and her claimed medical expenses, but also for intentional infliction of emotional distress because I had maliciously maintained a hazardous wall that she claimed was designed to cause harm to vehicles. The lawsuit was absurd, but I still had to respond. We filed a motion to dismiss, but the judge denied it, saying there were enough factual disputes to warrant a trial. In the meantime, the HOA fined me $100 per day for being in violation of their new rules. After 30 days, they filed a lien against my property for $3,000 of fines. I was caught in a nightmare. I was being sued by my neighbor, fined by my HOA, and facing potential legal fees that could bankrupt me, all because my neighbor crashed in my own property. But I wasn't going to back down. I started doing some digging. First, I talked to other neighbors. It turns out Karen had a history of blaming others for her mistakes. One neighbor told me Karen had once backed into their mailbox and claimed the mailbox was improperly positioned. Another said Karen had complained about their tree dropping leaves into her yard and demanded they pay for a cleaning service. Next, I requested all HOA board meeting minutes from the past year. I wanted to see if these supposed new guidelines had actually been discussed and voted on. The HOA stalled, claiming the minutes weren't finalized yet. My lawyer had to file a formal request under state law. When we finally got the minutes, there was no mention of updated setback requirements. In fact, the only mention of walls or fences was a discussion about painting them community colors. We also discovered something interesting. The HOA president and Karen were members of the same book club and had dinner together at least twice a month. More damning, we found social media posts showing them vacationing together the previous summer. With this information, we filed a countersuit against Karen for the damages to my wall. We also filed a complaint with the state HOA Oversight Board, alleging that the HOA board was selectively enforcing rules and retaliating against me for not paying Karen's damages. The discovery process was revealing. We obtained Karen's phone records from the day of the incident. She had been on the phone for 12 minutes right before the crash. We also got the police report, which she had never mentioned. The responding officer noted that Karen admitted she was looking at her phone when she hit the wall. Even more damning, we found out that Karen had received 2 speeding tickets in the past year on her street. She had a history of driving too fast in the neighborhood. As the court date approached, I was nervous but confident. The evidence was clearly on my side. Karen's lawyer kept trying to get me to settle, offering to drop the lawsuit if I would just pay her medical expenses and move my wall. I refused. The day of the trial arrived. The courtroom was packed with neighbors who had heard about the case. Karen was there with her lawyer and a couple of her HOA board friends. I had my lawyer and several neighbors who had agreed to testify on my behalf. Karen's lawyer went first, painting Karen as the victim of a dangerous wall that had no business being so close to the street. He showed photos of her damaged Jeep and talked about her injuries and emotional distress. Then it was our turn. My lawyer systematically dismantled their case. We showed the original building permits for the wall, proving it was properly built and within all codes. We presented photos of every other wall on the street, showing they were all positioned exactly like mine. We introduced the police report where Karen admitted she was looking at her phone. We called witnesses who testified about Karen's history of blaming others for her mistakes. We presented evidence that the HOA had not actually passed any new guidelines about wall setbacks. We showed the social media posts proving Karen's relationship with HOA board members. When Karen took the stand, she stuck to her story, but under cross-examination, her story fell apart. She admitted she was on her phone right before the crash. She admitted she didn't actually see the wall before hitting it. She even admitted that she had never complained about the wall before the incident. The judge listened patiently to both sides. When it was time for his ruling, he didn't mince words. The judge dismissed Karen's lawsuit completely. He found that she was entirely at fault for the crash and that my wall was properly situated and maintained. He even awarded me damages for the cost of repairing my wall, plus court costs. But he didn't stop there. The judge referred the matter to the district attorney's office, suggesting that Karen and certain HOA board members might have engaged in fraud and conspiracy by falsifying HOA guidelines and attempting to force me to pay for damages I didn't cause. He also referred the HOA to the State Oversight Board for their role in the scheme, noting that they had abused their power and failed to follow their own procedures. The aftermath was swift. Karen received a visit from the district attorney's office. Within a week, she put her house up for sale. 2 HOA board members resigned. The State Oversight Board launched an investigation that resulted in the entire HOA board being removed and replaced. I never did get my $3,000 in fines back from the HOA, but I did get a new board that was much more reasonable. They immediately reversed the violation notice against my wall and even sent me a written apology. As for Karen, she moved away a few months later. The last I heard, she was living in a rental community without an HOA, probably because no other HOA in the area would have her. The experience taught me a valuable lesson about HOAs and neighbor disputes. Sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult and expensive. HOAs have a lot of power, but they're not above the law. And when someone tries to blame you for their mistakes, you don't have to accept it. If you're dealing with a similar situation, document everything. Take photos, keep records, and don't be afraid to legal help if you need it. The cost of fighting back might seem high, but the cost of letting bullies win is even higher. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't back down. It was stressful and expensive, but in the end, justice prevailed. And now I have a beautifully rebuilt wall that serves as a daily reminder that sometimes you have to fight for what's yours. So that's my story of how Karen slammed her Jeep into my wall, filed a lawsuit against me, and how the judge had the final word. It's a reminder that in life, you can't always control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. And sometimes, standing up for yourself is the only option. Subscribe to my channel for more stories about navigating neighborhood politics and standing up to bullies.